Okay, so when we work with the admin, okay, there's certain areas that admins work with. Now, there's two different segments that we're going to take a look at. One is right here, users. This is something that administrators are the only ones that have access to, is this users tab, and it governs the users that have a login and the groups that they are being made part of. Okay, so that's one thing. But this isn't where we create people. If I go to users, there's no way for me to add a user. That's actually done at a different spot. Now, remember yesterday when we worked with the tour at the beginning, I said I'd show you the dashboard, but then I couldn't get it to work, but now it does. Well, this is what the dashboard looks like. So when you pop into your dashboard, it will look like this. Okay, now mine's very complicated and whatever, crowded and things like that. And the reason for that is because I'm a super admin, I can go into anybody's site. Okay, so I have all these different CMS ones because I have access to all these CMS sites. And when I get down to the events, that's the calendar that I have attachments to everyone's calendar. And then I have forms for their form builder and things like that. So I'm looking at everybody that I work with. I don't know whose is whose because it doesn't tell me. So we try not to show this to you at the very beginning because it kind of boggles the mind. But there are really only the potential for 3, and for you guys, only the potential for 2. You will have CMS, which is this guy in a yellow sweater sitting in front of a computer. That takes you into the website. Okay, that will take you into being able to work on the web pages like we've been doing for the past 2 days. The other one you'll probably have is this guy down here in purple, which is forms, taking you to the form builder. Form builder still exists in its original iteration, but it's a separate app. And because it's a separate app, we have a separate entryway into there. Okay, so your forms, it works no differently. The only difference is that because we're not using iCreate, we can't go to the More Plus dropdown and click on Form Builder from there anymore. Now, on your dashboard, you'll click on Open from Forms, and that will project your profile into the Form Builder and allow you to be able to work with it. Forms are still put out onto the website the same way. When we were working with it on iCreate, we were creating hyperlinks based upon the URL that's found under the Publish tab. That hasn't changed. You're just going to implement it as a hyperlink, following along with the hyperlink rules that we have here, which were, you opening that piece on any given page. So if I go back to content, all you're doing is say on text mark page here. When I go to here, if I wanted to create a hyperlink, I would just simply highlight the word that I want as the hyperlink and click on the add a link. And from here, I am picking a page, but for Form Builder, I'm copying and pasting the URL into the URL link like it's an external piece, because it is. And I create a link to that particular form. So that's how you're going to translate it over. But we're right now looking at the dashboard. So the dashboard at the top, you'll only have CMS and maybe forms. Okay, just the 2 of them. Now it says I'm in here as a super admin, so it will tell you what your role is when you get here. But there's one unique piece that exists here for administrators. And that's over here with my little dot with my initials in it. And if I click on that, I have this piece that says Manage Users. If I'm on the inside of Govstack CMS, okay, if I close that off, I don't have Manage Users here. That Manage Users, if you're an administrator, only appears up here on the dashboard. Okay, this is where we go to create new users or to disable users or people who have retired or moved on to a different position. It's through Manage Users. And if I click on this, it takes us to something called the admin portal. And the admin portal is where it's kind of like the user manager from iCreate, where we add new people into the system. So if I was to click on this, it would take us to the admin portal. And the admin portal looks like this. Now, you may not have all the different categories at the top, but you'll have the important ones. Okay, so you'll have search users and new user management. Those are the ones that you'll be using. Search users allows me to go and find anybody. So if I pick on Erica, I can go in here and put in the first name, Erica. And what I do is when I hit search, it'll find all the Ericas, and there's Erica's profile. I just click anywhere on here, and it takes me in and says, hey, you're an active member, your account's in good standing, and you should be able to log in. But what it does do, it says in the city of Aurelia Recreation, because that's what your website is, Erica will have access to the CMS and the dashboard. Okay. So if you're going to be using the form builder later on, we would need to add that application so it would appear on your dashboard. So the dashboard is this. So what we said when it comes to Erica is she has access to the dashboard. So that makes it come up. But right now, the only application she can get into through here is the CMS, which means that the only one thing on our dashboard is this guy in the yellow shirt. And as soon as she clicked on open from here, it would take her into the Govstack and add her under the users in here, which it has. Where are you, Erica? There you are. Okay, that's how that works. That's all that does right there is allows me to check on someone. Now, if I need to add somebody, and this is where I could go in and I could deactivate the member or delete the member if they've left the city recreation and is no longer going to be part of this, I could delete them from here. So this is where admins could go to create and delete. If I need to create a new user, I go to new user management. And in here it asks me for an email where you put in their work email, their first name and their last name. And as you see here, it says email setup instructions. That's what Caitlin sent out to you that has all the instructions on that platform.govstack that you went to deal with that. So you check this box, sending an email out to them when you create their profile. So I added in their email address, their first and last name, check the box. Now, you won't be asked which organization because I'm a super admin. I can go anywhere. I'm going to be working with just you guys, City of Aurelia Recreation. And when we go into here, it says applications. So what I would do is pick dashboard for this person and CMS. Now that person has access through their dashboard because I created the dashboard, to the CMS. And that's all there is to it. Email address, first and last name, send the instructions, and add the applications. Now, if you're using events or you're using forms, we can add those in here, but they're not available at this time for you guys to add in. So all you need to make sure is that they have the dashboard so that this thing shows up and have what they can go into the app, which is CMS, which allows them to have this box. And that's all there is to creating a person. Does that make sense? Now, once again, that creative process through the admin portal can only be accessed by website administrators from their own dashboard using the manage users. It doesn't exist anywhere else. Okay. Now, once you've got everybody created by using the admin portal to bring everybody in, which of course everybody that's part of the training is already part of that. But if you add somebody new, you've hired them on, they've watched the training videos, you're good to go. You need to come, an administrator needs to come in, go to their dashboard, click on manage users, and from there, they're going to go to new user management and create that person, giving them access to the dashboard and at least CMS. Once they've done that, that person will get their email. They'll follow along the same procedure that you guys did, and it will automatically project their profile into the CMS. Well, that's where we now change the destination of where we're going to be. All that this admin portal does from the dashboard is allows you to create and maintain the user profiles. How they function is all done through users in CMS. Now, the reason for that is that CMS, events, and forms are three completely separate programs, and each one has its own security system. So the profiles are projected into each one of those three based upon your ability to have access on your dashboard. So as soon as you click the open button on CMS, and if you ever had events or forms, it projects you into the security systems for each of those three. Events and forms are identical to the way that they worked with iCreate. We've just simply integrated them with Govstack. What we are working with, and what you've learned for the past 2 days, is the regular CMS. So once you've done that, you'll end up being here. Okay. Now, if I click on users, only administrators have access to the users tab. So the regular editors won't be able to come here. Now, I picked users from our contextual menu, and it says, here's all the people that have clicked on that little guy in the yellow shirt to project into here. Now, once you're in here, we can control what groups you're part of. Do you want someone to be just an editor? Or do you want someone to be a website administrator? Those are the two pieces that you have access to. Well, these are just the users. And if I pick on Allie here and go in and look at Allie's piece here, this governs how she can work. But there's really nothing added into here. What it really comes down to is her ability to engage with the CMS is based upon the group that she's part of. Okay. Now, Allie's part of the editors group, and Jessica's part of the editors group, and Kurt's part of the editors group, and so on. Now, how do they work? And because we also have people that are website administrators, they have a different role inside here. Well, that's up here. We're looking just at the users, but I can look at the groups. And it says, here's the editors. Now, what it's saying is that the editors have access to the content and the media, meaning that the only two things that they see in the sections up here are those two. Now, the website administrators, someone like Erica in here, has content, media, and users. So they have the extra content piece here, which is what we're looking at right now. Now, so Erica can come in here and be able to function as an administrator. Well, what does that mean? Well, if I go into the editor group, it defines all the things and how an editor works. Anybody who's part of that group automatically gets attached with all these different permissions and things. Well, what do these things do? Well, if I go back out to the main area, I can create a group at any point in time. Remember, only administrators can get to this users tab, but they can create user groups. Now, user groups, I might create another group of editors. I'm like, well, why do I need to create a second group of editors when I already have them? Well, one of the things that happens is I might want people to function in the same capacity, in the sense that you can go in, you can navigate around, you can edit stuff, and throw some pictures in, and off you go. So you're editing pages. But if I want to say, but I have a group of people that I only want to go to culture, and I have another group that only does recreation, and another group, they all edit pages the same way, but I might want to specify and say, and I only want those culture people to go into the culture pages, and I only want the recreation people to go into the recreation pages. Well, I need to be able to specify who can go there. So what I can do is I can create groups of people that function the same way, but because they live in separate groups, I can target and say this group can go in here, but these groups can't. Okay, so we can create our own groups. So if I want to create my own group, I can hit create group, and it says, well, what do you want to call your group? Well, we'll call it Mark Training, because that's what I call absolutely everything in here. So when I have a group of Mark Training, these are my Mark trainers. Now they're just editors. They're not administrators. They're just going to be editors. But the first thing it says is, well, what sections do I want them to have access to? That's these things up here. Well, when I go and hit add, I see all of them. Because I'm a super admin, I can see all the things that you guys really can't. But when you come into here, when Erica comes into here, Erica will only see content, media, and users. She can't see the other ones because she herself doesn't have access to them. So you can only assign these content sections based upon the ones you already have access to yourself. So the most that Erica could add to a group is content, media, and users, creating a second administration group. But you probably only need one administration group. What you really want to do is just kind of govern how the editors are able to work. So we're going to make these guys editors. Well, editors only have access to content and media. So I check content and media and hit submit. Well, now I've said those are the sections that they will see up in this line. Everybody with me so far that I can define the sections, but I can only add sections that I myself have access to? Okay, the next thing is languages. Just put this slider on. I know you have an English only site, but if you ever add extra languages, it allows these people to go and access all the different languages and pages. For some of our Eastern Ontario friends or people in New Brunswick and things like that, that have fully bilingual sites, we have specialists that are in groups that just work on the French pages or just work on the English, and we can limit where they can go by picking which languages they're part of here. Okay, so I'm going to turn it on for all of them. Well, then it says content start node. So content is what we look at when we're here. And if you remember from what's been displayed in this content area on the contextual menu, it starts at recreation, which is the home page. And I have access to all of the children that go with that. So all the master nodes that we have, and all the pages are attached, and the children of those pages, and so on. I can also go to the contacts directory and global and all those. This is saying when we go in, when you're looking at the content, it's really talking about the pages. It's not worried so much about global or design, things like that. It's talking about pages. Where do I want people to start touching pages? Now, there are three ways that we can look at this. I can give somebody full access. Go to any page you want, okay? That is all encompassing. But there might come a time, as we talked about, where this group is only responsible for a certain type of page. They're only working with culture. And so I can use this content start node to say start at the culture page. And you can use the culture page at any of the children and grandchildren of culture, but anything that's outside of that, you're excluded from. So I can target a specific area and say you can only go here. And the third one is I want you to be able to go everywhere except culture. You can edit any page you want, but don't touch culture. So you can look at it from the perspective of look at everything, or I can say only look here, or I can say look at everything, but don't look over here. So 3 different ways that we can work with people. Now, 2 of them are governed right here. The starting. Where do I want somebody to start engaging with the content that we have? So if I go to the content start node and add, it gives me the hierarchy. And what I could say, if I want it to be everything, wide open, I click on the word content. And this sets it up to have a content root. And what it does is say start at the highest level, which is the home page for recreation. And this says you are wide open to touch any of the bottom pieces below that. Okay, so if I want it to be everywhere, I'm just going to remove that. I pick the word content that sits above everything. It gives me the content root. Now, the second one we can target here is I only want you to go to one specific area. So the way I would do that is when I go to add from here, if I only want them to work with the culture pages, I use the expansion here and I check culture. Where culture starts, the culture page and any of the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, however far you want to take it down, they have access to everything from culture that is attached and everything is attached below. But they are excluded from recreation and the youth service and all those kinds of things. They can't go there because they start at culture. Does that make sense that I can either give them wide open access or I can say you can only go in this from here and anything beyond? Does that make sense? If I want to say you can go everywhere except one spot or except certain spots, I give it the content root here at the top saying you can go anywhere you want. And later on, I'm going to say, but not here, but not here, but not here. Okay, so if you're going to do it where you want them to go everywhere except a place, give them the content root and we turn it off at the bottom of the page when we get down there. Okay. Now, the next piece we have is the media start. Now, media, of course, is where we store all of our images or videos or documents that we're using. It functions the same way. When this particular group comes in, where do I want them to be able to go for media? Well, I can go ahead and hit add, and I can say you can go to any folder, in which case I click on the word media at the top, and it gives me the media root. It will allow me to start right at the top and go to any folder I want. But if I only want my Mark trainers to go into my Mark training folder, then I can simply go into here and say, well, let's go over to our media folders. And I only want you to go to Mark training and any child pages that have to do with that. In which case I've now said, you can't touch any of the other things. You can only start here and put anything you want under there. So it's all contained. Okay. Does that make sense? So now I've said where they get access to the sections up here and where they can go. We're going to let them go to any page, but only to the Mark training folder for their media. Okay. Well, now once I've decided where they can go, I can set the permissions. And what do my Mark trainers get to do? Well, there are some administrative functions that I may or may not want them to have access to. Changing culture and host names. Culture and host names is not culture because you have that as a piece there. Culture are these things here. Okay, these major things that we display out here. I may not want them to be able to change those things. That's an executive decision that maybe only website administrators should be deciding, maybe even not even them. So I'm going to leave it off. Restricting public access, being able to lock the public out of certain areas. Well, probably I'd leave that to administrators as well. And rollback, and I showed you rollback was when we could go back to a previously published version of a page and say, let's go back to that. I may or may not turn those on for my group. I'm going to leave them off for my guys. Well, then we get into the content. Browse node, do I want them to be able to navigate around to different pages? Well, yeah, that'd be good. And do I want them to create content templates, right? Maybe this is something I would want to leave to be administrators only, so I might leave that off. What about deleting pages? Now, remember I said that under advanced on each page, I can disable the delete. Well, I can disable the delete right here and say I don't even have to worry about those things because my entire group cannot delete. So I can take the delete function out of their hands by leaving this off. If I do trust them enough to delete things, I can turn it on. Create. Do I want them to be able to start new pages? And we do have some clients that say, no, the admin group is, start the pages and the editors just go into the ones that we've created and work with them. So I can turn that on or off whether I want them to be able to create. Notifications. So this is access notifications for content nodes. And what this means is that when I'm working with something and I can send out notifications about things like I changed this or I'm going to do that. If I want to use the current approval process, I have to turn this on. I need to send a notification to someone to then approve this before we put it out there. Okay, so that's one piece of the current piece. Now, if you're familiar with the approval process we have with iCreate, we're currently in the build of having something that can be built with a structure like that, but attached to Govstack. So that'll be rolled out in the future. Okay, but for now, you would send a notification out, but you also have to use this one that says send to publish. So access to a node for approval before publishing. So you turn those two on and you send to publish. So when you hit the publish button, it sends to publish and you send a notification to the person who needs to be the one to approve that. So you'll need to set up a flow of how a workflow of how you want to go and let your editors know who they're supposed to send that to if you want to use the current version of approvals. Okay. Publish. Do I want them to be able to publish nodes? So I can leave that off and say that no editor is allowed to publish things. It's only administrators that are going to do that for now. Okay. So you can turn those on or off. Permissions. Do I want them to change permissions for a node? I probably don't want my regular editors to be able to change the permissions of who can go where. So I might leave that off. Unpublish. Do I want them to be able to unpublish pages if I need them to? And then update. Do I want them to be able to hit a save button to save that? Well, yeah. So what I've done is I've set the baseline of their content. Say you can navigate around and you can delete them and you can create them. You can be part of an approval process. You can publish them when you're done. You can unpublish them if necessary, and you can save it. So I've now set a baseline. Unless told otherwise, that's how my MARC trainers will function. And then I've got these structure ones. How do I copy? Can I copy pages or move pages from one node to another or sort the order so that I can change it to be alphabetical? Well, maybe I'll let them make it alphabetical, but I don't want them to move different to one node to another. And yeah, they can copy if they need to. So I've now set the structure basis. So unless told otherwise, my MARC trainers function like this. And of course, each editing group could be a little different if I needed it to. Okay, well, some can delete and some can't, right? Now, how do we add people to our group? Well, here in the top corner, it says add. And when I create my group, I could hit add and I could pick anybody that's got a login and I can add them as part of my group. Okay, and submit. Now they're part of my group. Now, when I head down to the very, very bottom, I have granular permissions. Now, as I mentioned up here when we were talking about the content route, this leaves it wide open. You can go anywhere. And if I wanted them to say you could only go to one area, I could start them at that area and say you can only go here in all the child pages. If you want to say you can go everywhere except one place, or except some places, then give them the route. They can go anywhere. And at the very bottom, I can pick a node and change how this group interacts with it. So what I can do is say, in here, I'm going to add a granular permission. And what I'm going to say is out of the nodes that I have of recreation, culture, the youth center, and parks and facilities, my MARC trainers can go anywhere except Aurelia Youth Center. They cannot go into that one at all. Well, from here in the granular permissions under nodes, I pick the Aurelia Youth Center. And what it will do is move the default permissions over here and say, what would you like to change? Now, if I want to lock them out of the youth section, I simply turn all these off and hit submit. And now it says, okay, as a default, you can go anywhere you want and function and do what you need based upon these until you get to a real youth center, in which case you have no permissions. You can't go in there at all. Okay. But you could also change stuff. You can go in here and say, okay, Under the, so can't go to the youth center, but when it comes to parks and facilities, I want you to do everything that you used to be able to do, but I don't want you to be able to delete or create pages or publish. Okay, I just want you to be able to navigate around and edit things. That's it, and then save it, and then you'll notify us and we'll publish. And I can hit submit. So what I've done now is I've said, unless told otherwise, you function like this. But I've told you otherwise that under parks and facilities, you can go there, but you can only touch the engage with it this way. I can remove permissions, or I can go in and I can add permissions they didn't have. Okay, or I can lock them out. Do the granular permissions make sense? So you can go in and you can work group by group and set up how they will function through here. Okay, people can be part of multiple groups. If you're part of multiple groups, it will always give you access to the greatest amount of things that you have access to. So if one group says you can publish and the other says you can't, you'll be able to publish because one of your groups says you can. Does that make sense? And that's all there is to working with your users. The only thing you might do is go into some, and I'm not going to save this, I'm not going to create this, but if I go back to users here, I might say, okay, Ali, you're going on sabbatical for a year. So you don't actually need to log in here, but you'll be back. So I don't want to delete you. But what you can do is go into their profile. You can simply disable their profile from here, which means that they're locked out until told otherwise, until you re-enable it. So if you need to disable somebody's login because they're destroying their pages or something like that, you can always disable their login until you have a word with them and set the parameters of how they should be functioning. Okay. Does users and what we can govern here make sense? That's all there is to the specialty admin functions. Using our dashboard to go through and manage users to the admin portal, you can adjust how users work with this or delete them, or you can create new people. But that's just a profile. And then you come into the CMS and you go to users, and from there you can create groups or assign people to be part of groups through here. But once you've set that up, off they go. So there's very little unique stuff that we want the administrators to do. Most of it's wide open. What it comes down to is if you don't want your editors to touch the global, or you don't want editors to touch the design tab, you simply pick an editor, and from their areas here, you might say, okay, well, they're governed by the editor group. So what you would do is say, well, I don't want any of my editors to go in this. You go to groups, you go into editors, and what you can do is under your granular permissions down here, you can go in and say, I don't want the editors to go to the design tab. That's an admin only. Well, what I can do is click on design from here and turn all of their permissions off. Okay. And now what this does is the editors can go anywhere they want in here, but they won't see the design tab because I turned it off. Okay. So it's up to the people that are going to be in here as administrators, and right now it's only Erica, to go through and decide how you want to set your editor group up and what you want them to touch and what you don't want them to touch. As it stands, your editor group has content and media as their section pieces. They can go to the content root and they can go to any page and to any folder in the media. If you need to change that for your group, you simply edit it or remove it and start fresh, how you want to work with that. Their default pieces that they have turned on here. Okay. If you want to change this for your editors, say we don't want them to be able to publish pages, turn it off. But that sets the baseline. And if there's any specific areas you want to lock them out of, you would use the granular permissions down here in order to lock them out of areas or restrict what they can do when they get there. Does that make sense, especially to Erica, who is going to be functioning apparently as the website administrator for now?
Yes, we will definitely be adding others to that category.
Yeah. So you guys can have a discussion about how you want your editor group to be able to access different things here. As I said, if everybody has access to the design node, then you can end up with 54 different design things all over the place, right? So it is something that you might want to look into and leave some things to be sort of an executive function that the only people that are website administrators can do. But you understand how you can impact and change and restrict and grant and all those kinds of things in here. Are we good with what this does? Now, the only thing to sort of wrap up all this stuff is the little bits and pieces. I never went over specifically how we edit the homepage, but you already know the homepage is just a regular page, but sits at the top. You know that you have these particular pieces and they're pods, okay? And inside the pods that we have, they have components that you know how to work with text and images. So you know how to edit all the different pieces that are on the homepage, and you know how to hide them too through your settings wheel. You don't want the content banner there. You can go in through your advanced and you can hide that piece from the website. Please do not delete the pieces from your homepage. You may need them later on and they're tough to build because we've already set them up. Trying to remember after something you deleted a year ago can be kind of tough. So all you're doing with the homepage is just editing the pieces there if necessary. Now, the other thing I haven't shown you fully, I showed you how we could copy in here, okay? But I didn't show you how we can move things around. If I decide I want my text mark under culture now, I could go to text mark, right click and go to move. And it says, okay, well, where do you want to move it to? Well, I want to move it to culture. And when I hit move, it removes me from the recreation side and adds me under culture. So you can always move. That's something you couldn't do in iCreate. When you created something under a particular vertical storage area, it lived there forever, okay? Because you couldn't move it around. Now we can move things around. So if I needed to move things from one segment to another, I can. So I've now moved the text mark under culture, okay? Now, in my text mark that I have here, and of course I can move it back simply by going into my text mark, right clicking again and say move, and let's put them back under recreation. There you go. And we're patient. I think I broke it right at the very end. There we go. Okay, so I moved everything over, but you notice it moved not only text mark, but all the child pages with it. So it will move that area and anything underneath it. Now, my intention when you go to a page here, you take a look at this. This should be alphabetical, but it's not. So if I need to sort these, you're sorting by the parent. You're talking to the parent saying, let's line your kids up in the right order. So I would go to text mark as the parent here because it's already alphabetic under recreation conveniently, but my child pages are. So I go to the parent and I right click and I go to sort, and it takes a look at all the pieces that are attached underneath. It says, go ahead and organize them. Well, accordion's mark should come first. So when I can just drag and drop it. And then when I head down, it should be then data list. Gallery's fine. Yeah, those two are ordered and split up. It's all in order now. So when I hit save, it's going to adjust the order that these were originally in. And now when I come back out here and I refresh and I look at the submenu, it's now all alphabetized. So you sort with the parent and it will show you all the children. You can line them up. Does that make sense? Okay. That's all there is to Govstack. So yesterday we started, we took a look at from the outside world. We looked at the home page and looked at the different components that sort of become that springboard to any other section within there. We learned how we logged in and how it navigate around to the different sections that we have up here at the top and what we can impact and what you'd have access to and how the structure is built. And then after a break, we spent the rest of the day learning how to build pages. So how we add pages into here, picking different templates and so on to pick from, and the different components that we can add into there. Now, I did tell Randy earlier that I would show a few different spots of where we can work to embed code. So in various things. So if I go into text mark here and I go into here, I can actually from content, I can use that embed code, right? So when I go embed code, it's simply script. So if you're going to, if that particular ebook is a script, this is where you would add it in so it would have access onto a page. Does that make sense so far, Randy? Yep.
It does.
Okay. Yep. Other things we can do in here is that actually within a text box like we have here, in our piece here, we have a couple of different things we can work with. So if we're taking a look through here, we actually have insert a macro. So inside here, if I decide that I want to insert a macro into here, I can click on this, and what it does, it brings it over here. So you can insert a form with a theme if you want in here. Okay, so you can simply click on add a form, and it will go to there. Now, to have these forms of things you can pick, I'm not sure how you add to that list. But so that is something that you would have to reach out to Caitlin, who would say how you can access that if that's how we decide that that's how your ebooks are going to be able to be attached into here. Okay, but you would use that insert macro. Now the other one we have here is embed, and if I click on the embed from here, should it populate? This is a URL. So if your ebooks are stored under a particular URL, you would move the that particular move that particular piece into your media folders, and then whatever it's there is, you would copy and paste the URL. So if you're using a YouTube channel, okay, you would copy and paste the YouTube URL in here, and it would put a display of it would embed a YouTube player in here for you to be able to view it. So like I said, it depends on how those ebooks are projected, whether it's done with a URL or a script or some kind of macro thing. However, like I said, they can look into your iCreate and learn how you were using it before, but you have a number of different ways that you can embed them into here for display. But you'd have to reach out and talk to the dev team, who can look at how the format that they're controlled with, and they can tell you how to best display it here. So I know it's not a full answer for you, Randy, but we do have some options with this. So my suggestion is when we're done the training here and you have your kind of follow-up, that's something that should be pushed out to Caitlin, asking how do we get those ebooks inserted onto our pages. Does that kind of answer your question for now, Randy?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, so we can follow up with that later on. So we learned all these different things that we can work with on pages as we built through here. And that's what we did yesterday. And so once we completed that, we showed up today and we learned how to work with some smaller pieces. So how to create news stories and how we can customize categories to go with it and build alerts, so that in a couple of different styles to be able to be displayed. And then we looked at the context directory, just a way to organize your contacts onto a singular space where people can reference it so that they can know which department they need to call or a particular person. And then we looked at the global and how we can impact a mask over everything and how that interacts and where it interacts within here to create that the colors and the button structures and the font styles and all that kind of stuff that blankets your entire piece. And then we moved into the design where we learned, hey, we can create our own too. And we can create our extra global pieces, and we can target specific areas in here to look a little bit different. So we took a look at that. And then we finish up with the admin. How do I add a new user here? And once I've added them in, when I assign them to a group, how can I create new groups, or how can I manage groups to be able to function only the way we see them as functioning within here? And that's what we kind of worked with. And that's really everything you need to know about Govstack. It's really simplified compared to what iCreate was. But you are now fully trained on how to be able to use any of these things. Okay. Now, just to finish all this up is what happens now. Okay. You've all got logins now, so you should be able to go in and start editing all these things. Okay. So you need to make sure that you get all your people logged into here so that everybody has access, and you get them assigned to the correct groups, and you set the permissions of the groups up to function the way you want. As people start to work on the pages, you start building your website. Now you can use your old website to copy and paste that content over to here and get all the information that you need moving through into here. That's not a problem. So you start working with those kinds of things, and you're ready to move forward with all of that. Now, support from our end. There's actually 3 different layers of support that you can have while you're getting ready to do this. There's always Caitlin. Now, Caitlin is the person that you contact for things that are conceptual. So, Randy, you had an idea that you want to put these ebooks out there. That's a concept that we need to make sure can work with this. So only the developers sort of can give you a definitive answer whether that can be done, and if so, how. Because it's not part of the normal things that we create as part of this. So if it's something conceptual, can it be done? And if so, how does it happen? Well, Caitlin talks to the development team and finds out the details and provides that back to you. So she's your connective piece about whether things can be done or not. And if so, what does it entail, and can we get it set up for that? Okay. Now the opposite end of that is if stuff's broken. Okay. You come in here and it's throwing errors and it's not displaying right and it's got, all kinds of stuff going on. Well, that's the support team. And that's found through your little question mark up here in your Govstack. And in there you can go to the support page. And of course you can create a ticket or you can send an email or call us. And if they can't resolve it right off the bat, or as part of that connection, they can log a ticket on your behalf and we'll get it resolved. Now, falling in the middle of those two things is me. I'm your, what do I click on? So we could have spent the rest of the week looking at every single little component and tweak we could do here to find out how absolutely everything works. But what we really wanted to get across to you is the concepts. What's this capable of doing? And really it comes down to your own creative influence and vision about how you want your page to look. And it might be different. The people who work with the Aurelia Youth Center might have a different vision of how they want things done than people that are doing parks and facilities. So it's up to you guys how you want those kinds of things to work. So working with the, you have the resource center where you can go and look up details and step-by-step how to do it. You got the videos. But if you still can't find an answer to things, please don't hesitate to let me know. Okay, I'm the guy that does all the clicking here and teaches you how to do that. So if you're trying to do something, say, I can't get it to look the way you did it, and I'm trying to follow along, I don't know what I'm missing here, whatever it happens to be, fire me an email. You got it from the invitation that I sent out. Fire me off an email. If it's something I can resolve by taking a screenshot with a little arrow click here kind of thing, I can do that. And if it's something a little bit more complex, we can set up one of these Microsoft Teams meetings and we can share the screen together and get it worked out so that you can display and do all the things you need to in here. So I'm always here as a resource for you. So please don't hesitate to send me an email. If I don't get back to you immediately, it's usually because I'm training somebody, but I will get back to you at the soonest that I can. And truly, if you don't know who to contact, let me know, because I can always put you in connection with the resource or the person that's responsible for those things. So I'm always here to help you move forward, getting the site ready for you to show the magic to your people that want to access your website. So with that being said, are there any questions about anything? And I know it's a ton to take in. You've got to go in and start clicking on things to sort of get your head wrapped around it. But conceptually, is there anything, any questions you have that are outstanding that I didn't get to as part of the training? Okay, well, let me stop the recorder there.